Stay tuned for urban legends to ghostly tales of the paranormal, because now it's time for
Message on the Wall.
This is Message on the Wall and the Hillside Home. In 1985, when John Matkowsky was in search of somewhere to live, when he found a rustic cabin, he knew it was going to be his new home. Things happened almost from the beginning of John moving in. Things he explained away, such as the strange sounds being the 1906 house groaning with age, and the tingling sensations he often felt on his arms and neck being a draught. But things were not to stay at just noises and tingling sensations. It was around 5 years later that things intensified. Those familiar with living in a haunted house will understand when I say that John began to catch movement from the corner of his eye. Of course, when he turned to look, nothing was there. Loud bangs would emanate from a room at the back of the house, but when John would go to investigate, no one was there. The tingling sensations also intensified, with John likening it to the feeling of sunburn, coming to recognise this as a sign of some form of presence. It wasn't only John who had experiences, as visiting friends also felt it. Maybe not wishing to be alone in the cabin with its eerie sounds and sensations, John rented out part of the home to his friend John Huckett, which seemed to increase the paranormal activity, as John Huckett not only heard the noises, but also saw shadows moving across the walls and furniture. On one occasion he sat at his desk when he felt a hand being placed on his shoulder. Turning, expecting someone to be there was no one. The two men decided the house was haunted, but the presence was trying to get their attention more than to do them any harm. It was John Huckett who saw the ghostly form of a man, though only for the shortest fraction of a second, and it was also through John Huckett that the cabin's spirit made contact. It was Christmas 1991 that John Huckett's father bought his son an instant Polaroid camera. Staying in Maryland with his family over Christmas, John Huckett took several pictures of his family, which all came out perfectly. When he returned to Los Angeles and the cabin, he still had half a cartridge of film. Showing his friend how the camera worked, they took a few pictures around the cabin, which also came out perfect. It was 3 months later that John Huckett got that familiar feeling associated with the presence. On an impulse, he got the camera and snapped off a picture, but all it showed was the room. But then the bathroom door opened of its own accord, and taking another picture, that was when John Huckett captured a strange mist in the doorway. Once the entity had found a way to make itself visible on film, there was many more to come. John Matkowsky had friends at Photo Lab examine the pictures, but they were just as perplexed as to how the images had got there. When a party was held at the cabin, a friend was shown the photos, but not being convinced of their authenticity, asked if the ghost was there now. John Huckett had to answer that he didn't know, but one way to try and find out was to take a photograph. Calling out, "Are you there?" John Huckett pressed the button on the camera. Much to his surprise, as the photo developed, there in the middle of the picture was the word "yes." This encouraged them to take more pictures, asking questions which sometimes replied in English and others in Latin. With this new phenomena, John Matkowsky contacted a television program called Sightings. The Sightings team went to the cabin to see for themselves, taking along parapsychologist Kerry Gaynor and photo analyst Edson Williams, bringing their own instant cameras and sealed film cartridges. At first, the writing didn't appear, but when it did, most of the answers came in Latin. When a member of the Sightings team asked if it was there for John or the house, a reply came, "Genius loci," which means guardian spirit of a man or place. After answering more questions, the spirit appeared to run out of patience. Both men felt that it wasn't a party trick, never performing on demand, and when the question was asked, "Will you be with them for a long time?" the reply came, "This is all over now." And it was, for that was the last photo containing a message. While Edson Williams was able to reproduce a similar effect, the duplication required access to the film cartridge and over an hour to complete. In a follow-up investigation, sightings returned to the cabin with renowned psychic Peter James. At first, Peter was sceptical, having been involved in numerous cases where he exposed fraudsters, but on this occasion, as soon as he entered the cabin, he felt not just one, but the presence of several essences. He impressed John Matkowsky and John Huckett, who had done some research on the previous owners. Peter James gave 3 names that were on their list, but didn't think any of them was responsible for the writing on the photos. He also described a man that had been murdered and thought he may even be buried beneath the house itself. And then there was a sense of an Indian tribe, feeling that the land had been used for ceremonial purposes. Following up on this theory, the men began small digs around the property, and sure enough uncovered shards of pottery that proved to be of Native American origin. For the 2 men it was proof that Peter James had been right, and had no doubt that he was right about the body beneath the house. Things may have settled at the Hillside home, but when the writer wants to make contact again, it surely will. You have been listening to Message on the Wall, brought to you in association with Paranormal Parodies. You can find Paranormal Parodies at paranormal-parodies.com.